Have you heard of ChatGPT? I previously mentioned it in my Sports Science Trends for 2023 video because when it was released at the end of 2022, it surpassed 1 million users in just 5 days. And maybe it's just the algorithm on my computer, but since then it seems to be everywhere. Even my mum asked me about it this week. So this tool is out there now, it's free and available, and it's up to us to work out how best to leverage it for our work. ChatGPT is a type of language model, which means it's been trained on a large amount of text data, which allows it to understand and almost respond to human language in a way that's similar to how a person would. You can ask it all kinds of questions and give it all different types of prompts, but it's not just a simple question answering machine like a search toolbar. It generates its own text and it can respond to you in more a conversational way. Today we're going to talk through some examples of the kind of prompts that we can use to leverage this AI-driven technology. Now, ChatGPT is run by OpenAI, so you can just find their website, openai.com. Now, the first time that you access ChatGPT, it will ask you to register by providing your email address and reading some of their small print around what ChatGPT can and cannot do. And thereafter, from time to time, you'll have to log in with your email, but generally you'll just open straight into chat.openai.com. And you'll notice this warning sign that they're experiencing high demand. As of right now, that's a very common warning message, and at times you'll find that it is at full capacity and won't actually be able to access it. You'll see that ChatGPT stores your conversations down the left here, which can be really useful, and it's giving you some suggestions here. So how about we start with something simple? So why monitor training load in athletes? Monitoring training load help to prevent injury and optimize performance to ensure that its athlete is not overtraining or undertraining. By tracking the amount and intensity, rest and recovery, monitoring training load can help identify patterns and declines. So yeah, lots of buzzwords in there. That's kind of what I would expect it to respond to. What about how do we monitor training load? Let's have it be a little bit more specific now. Okay, so now we're getting some more specific examples around heart rate monitoring, session RPE, a self-reported measure of exertion, training volume in terms of sets and reps, GPS tracking, biomedical markers, and also sleep and stress tracking. And a caveat at the bottom there, it's important to note that no single method is definitive and a combination of methods is often used. So one thing I'm noticing that hasn't been mentioned yet, we haven't talked about internal and external load, so I'm going to prompt it to explore that. So internal training load is the physiological and psychological stress, can be measured by heart rate, blood markers, perceived exertion. External load, on the other hand, refers to the physical demands of training, distances run, weights lifted, number of reps measured by tracking volume using GPS. The difference between internal and external load: internal reflects the physiological response, external load reflects the physical demand, and that it's important to consider both. Okay, so some quite interesting responses here so far. One thing I'm noticing that I hope you are as well is that it's not giving me any scientific references here. It's not giving me any citations. So I'm going to ask it to provide them now. And because this is a conversational chatbot, you can refer, you don't necessarily need to specify what you're talking about. I can just refer back to that, and it is keeping track of all the information and the discussion that's gone on in this conversation already. Now again, I've just said for that, so it's looking for references to that whole discussion. The more specific you are, the better it will be. So was I really asking for references in relation to the difference between internal and external load? Or was I asking for the references in relation to why we should monitor both, and more the importance of a multivariate approach, which may have different references? Now, I really want to hit on this point to be wary of references. Go back a month or so, and this question of providing scientific references often was basically answered with a no, that it couldn't provide that specific information. But that said, that doesn't mean these references are perfect. So as a quick glance, these all look, I think, roughly correct to me in terms of the citations. But I want to take you to one of my previous conversations now to show you some of the issues I've had when looking up references on this system. Okay, so this is a previous conversation, and I asked for a reference for this text. But because this was not a specific quote, it wasn't comfortable in giving a reference for that specific source. The definition is quite general, and you might find it described in multiple sources. I later asked for scientific articles in which they define the term wellness as it relates to athletes. And I was really interested in this response. The article Athlete Wellness Current Perspectives, published in the Journal of Athletic Training. However, I could not seem to find this article, and from what I've seen online as well, this is something others are coming across. Absolutely, we need to fact check the information that is coming out of this system. Okay, so hopefully you'll heed my warning around references. Let's now look at another way that we can use this as kind of our a research partner, is how I like to think about it. So I'm going to ask it to discuss the pros and cons of different types of technology to monitor external load. But I'm also going to ask it to I'm asking it to return this information in a table. We'll see we have lots of different options for how we use this system in terms of the prompts we put in influencing the information we get out. Okay, so this is an interesting response. We can see that, yes, the system's able to put it into a table. I've also seen that you can put it in bullet points, you can put it in numbered lists, you can stipulate different heading formats as well. As for the actual content, okay, yes, GPS. Obviously, again, this is very broad, and we could dive deeper into the information around the accuracy of measurement, which is a whole nother discussion in itself. Cons: expensive. Again, obviously technology is evolving, and now there are more cost-effective technologies available. And I think it's worth noting at this point that it is trained on information up to 2021. So anything from 2022 onwards, currently this system does not have access to. Can be affected by weather conditions, needs a constant power source. Not sure about that. The devices obviously need to have charge in the battery. Heart rate monitors. Well, I did specify specifically to monitor external load, and as we know, heart rate is more related to internal load. So I could even say I could get it to actually take that out of the table for me, because I don't agree with the relevance of that in this specific example. Okay, so GPS, accelerometer, video analysis. Again, we're going very broad here, but it's just a starter of how we can use ChatGPT. What about, can you define the infamous so acute chronic workload ratio? It knows that acronym is used to monitor the balance between acute and chronic load, compares the total volume in a specific period to the average over a longer period. Yep, the expressed as a ratio, used as an indicator of injury risk. Interesting there. I've used this before, and it's come out and said that it predicts injury, and that it should be used in conjunction with other metrics. So we're diving deeper now and asking it about rolling average versus exponentially weighted and seeing if it can explain this to me, the difference between them. So the main difference is how they take into account the historical training load. Exponentially weighted gives more weight to more recent training sessions. Rolling average is a simple method that gives equal weight to all the past data. It's important to note that both methods have their advantages and disadvantages, and the choice of which method to use will depend on a specific need. So very balanced response there. And I think, again, that's just a really nice, simple summary of that information that we can use as a starting point for our own research, ideas, and our own writing. Okay, so that's a bit of a discussion and a demonstration of how we can use ChatGPT as a bit of a research assistant to ask it about definitions and discussions and to some degree about references. But now I'm going to talk through some ways that we can use it in relation to our own writing. Okay, so I'm going to use an abstract from this publication from our work on tracking systems and team sports. And if you are interested in this paper, I have a video that is briefly discussing our discussion and some of our ways that you can analyse tracking system external load data in a sport specific manner. So have a look at that link. But what I want to do, I'm going to start by copying this abstract. I know this abstract, I think, is something like 230 words. So I'm going to challenge ChatGPT to try and improve it for me. Okay, so shift and enter to go down to a new line. And I'm going to paste in it, and I'm asking it, as I said, it's about 230 words. I'm asking the system if it can make it 200 words or less. Okay, so let me have a look at how many words this comes to. So I just had a look, and this now is as short as 111 words. So it certainly can do that, and we have to obviously cross-reference, okay, has it taken out any key context? But in brief, it's talking about team sport organisations investing in tracking systems, can support objective decision making, and this narrative review summarises the systems, their use, and emerging considerations such as time analysis. Examples of characteristics and applications across 7 popular team sports are presented. So again, I wouldn't necessarily use that word for word, but it's a nice way to get ideas of slight adjustments to your work. Now again, ChatGPT works best the more specific you are, so perhaps I should have been more specific around the actual word count I wanted. But there's also lots of different ways that we can use it in terms of making our text more concise or more engaging. We can ask it to remove unnecessary words, or we can ask it to write with an active voice. So the more information we put into the system, the more specific we get out. Now, how about titles? So I want to make sure that it knows it's a scientific journal. I don't necessarily have to put in the abstract again. It knows I'm relating or linking back to the most recent relevance in the conversation. But I'm asking for examples of different titles that we can use. Oh, okay, nice caveat there about checking with the journal. So remember, we called this Tracking Systems in Team Sports, a narrative review of applications of the data and sport-specific analysis. Here we have Tracking Systems in Team Sport, a review of methods and applications, very similar. But we also have some different ones here, objectively measuring performance. I probably wouldn't go for that because, as we know, performance is more than just physical outputs. Evaluating the effectiveness of tracking systems, optimizing. Okay, but what about, so that's for the journal article. What about, can you make So now I'm changing the tone. Rather than it being a scientific journal article, I want it to give me more suitable blog style articles. So we can already see that it's a little bit more clickbaity, unlocking the secrets of team sports performance, the future of team sports training. Injury proofing your team. Oh, we all wish we could do that. Training smarter, not harder, the science of monitoring load. So we can see there the difference again if we're being more specific. Do you want titles for a journal piece or do you want titles for a blog post? And what about if I wanted help getting started? I could even ask it to write a paragraph. So there I feel the need to specify that I want an introductory paragraph, but not for the blog post. I want it for this scientific article. Again, I fed in the information from the abstract, so it has some context of it being about tracking systems. So it's given me this paragraph, starting with the aim, given it's an introductory paragraph. The aim of this narrative review is to summarize and critically evaluate different tracking systems and their use within team sports. The review will provide an overview of the current state of the art of tracking systems. Additionally, the review will discuss the emerging considerations. Okay, so again, it's a nice starting point. Again, I'm noticing no citations, so let's see if it can add citations into that paragraph. So this is really interesting now that it is responding in this format with the numerical citations in the text and the references after. I've definitely done this before and it's used in-text citations. It is now giving us what looks to me to be relevant and accurate references. We'd certainly cross-reference all the detail there, but it looks to me like that is in APA referencing style. So I'm going to say okay, seems to have run out of a bit of steam here. Some of the bugs that we're going to find using a new tool, the training injury prevention paradox by Tim Gabbett, 2016. So now we did have it in APA and we've asked for Vancouver. So it looks to me that they do now accurately reflect that change in referencing style. So that may be a useful tool for ChatGPT. Now keep your eyes peeled. I do have a video coming out about different citation tools in the near future, but for the time being, perhaps this could be one way we could use ChatGPT. Moving on now with our article, to me, visibility and reach in the scientific community is a really important part of the process. So what about if we wanted it to suggest now we can see clearly it loves a hashtag and it's given us 3 on each one. But again, just some ideas here for different audiences or different platforms that we are sharing our writing on. And another way you can use this tool is by changing the tone of voice. So far we've talked about scientific, we've talked about blog, but what about making our research more accessible? So here we're asking it to explain the research that we've mentioned previously to a 10-year-old. So imagine you're playing on a sports team, you might get hurt or tired, right? What if we could make sure you weren't doing too much or too little? So we can even ask it to explain something in the tone of a surfer dude, for instance. You can pick any kind of tone that you want. So obviously that is an amusing way of using it, and I'm certainly less likely to use the tone of a surfer dude. But changing the tone to, say, a 10-year-old or a younger age such as that, it's a good way to be thinking about making our research more accessible. And perhaps if we're sharing it with the media or on blogs, it can help us to think about the tone and the language we use in a simpler way. So another way is to get ideas for future research or other directions for our work. So validation of tracking systems. Difficult to do, but important, of course. Development of new metrics could involve the use of machine learning techniques to identify patterns. As we know, that's a lot of discussion on that topic right now. Longitudinal studies, difficult to do. Comparison of tracking systems across different sport. Integration of tracking systems with other data sources. All ideas, areas that really are already being worked on. So again, the system is probably not too far off with those suggestions. So just some different ideas there of how we can use ChatGPT as a partner, as an assistant in terms of research and writing. And of course, there's many other ways that we can use it, which I'll be discussing in upcoming videos.